following tape is the second part of a presentation on the history of education and on the needs of education for the 21st century by Dr. Daria Brezinski. Dr. Brezinski is the president of Earth Heart Foundation. She has done research on educational models and techniques over the last 25 years throughout the nation and around the world. Dr. Brezinski is author of the book Education for the 21st Century, Whole Child Integrated Learning Systems. She is a developer of the Integrated Learning Systems model. She is an educator, lecturer, trainer, and mother.
I'd like to speak to you about education in a way that you might understand how the structure and the infrastructure of education looks from the outside. If any of you saw the last episode of the Mary Tyler Moore Show, you noticed that everyone did a group hug. In the process of doing a group hug, someone needed a tissue. The entire body of people who were hugging moved towards the tissue. They retrieved it and then all moved back again in unison. That's my ideal of what education looks like today. Let me explain a little bit more. Each and every time legislators create legislation to impose changes on educational infrastructure, the external structure of education shifts to another place because it is imposed from the outside. When school boards make policies and procedures, again, information coming from the outside attempts to impede the external infrastructure and merely shifts it again. Schools necessarily these days follow the flow of money, so they apply for grants. The Department of Education may have a grant that requires education training for prisons, so school districts follow the money and the flow of money in order to be able to accomplish more things and receive more income. In essence, nothing really changes in the infrastructure of education because it is the internal structure that needs to be changed, not the external. The last tape spoke to you about the 100-year-old principles of the 5-core curriculum, Carnegie units, and movement by age or by grade, and the compulsory attendance laws that are as far back as 150 years ago. Let's look for a moment at what might be called best practices, or what we call successful public schools. I'm going to extend to you some of the criteria we used to demonstrate the elements of success or best practices. They have demonstrated proficiency in at least 90% of these essential skills to qualify as successful. Some of them include positive attitudes, beliefs, thoughts, values, perceptions, ideas, and judgments about learning. In other words, the teachers, the students, the principal, and the community have a totally different attitude about learning and the way it takes place. Next, they must have been in existence for at least 20 years or more and demonstrated proficiency. Next, they had a positive impact on youths, especially with respect to racial, broad-based socioeconomic, disadvantaged, gifted, talented, and at-risk populations, most of them holding lotteries for applicants to come into the school. Next, they had a service model rather than control model. Rather than the teacher standing up in front of the classroom with a textbook, controlling students from movement and using the psychomotor domain and expressing feelings and thoughts and asking intelligent questions, these teachers, this is what a control model is. The teachers in the service model and the school as a whole represent serving the student to finding whatever it is that they would like to learn and capitalizing on the impetus for that child to project their will in learning something. We can impose everything. We have learned many, many things in history, historically speaking, and many authors have written and many scientists have studied the fact that we can offer many things to students to learn. The problem is, how do we get them to learn? And that learning process takes something that's internal, not external and imposed from without. In a service model school, the core is to find out what it is that internally motivates a student. Successful schools also have democratic principles, and I mean true democratic principles. Students monitor each other, students mediate each other, students write policies and procedures. Everyone has a say, not just a certain few. Everyone has a say in what happens in the school culture and the school community. I was thinking of a school in Sudbury, Massachusetts, where one day I visited, and in the school, students were walking around, but I saw a gentleman, actually a few adults, who were sitting around shaking hands, what seemed to be a form of politicking. And I asked the elders what they were doing. And in fact, they were politicking for students to hire them for the following year as teachers. It was the students in this school who hired the teachers in collaboration with the administration. In this school also, I saw teenagers and children of all ages hold court for students who had broken rules and policies of the school. There were 3 judges ranging in age from 6 to 18. There were attorneys on behalf of both defendants and participants of all kind. This is a truly democratic process. Most of the schools that we know that are successful hold in high esteem the fact that children need to learn democratic principles. There is always a continuous partnership with industry, business, and the local community. There is always effective and efficient incorporation of new technologies in appropriate ways, not as the focus of the curriculum, but as tools. There's always economic sustainability. Most successful schools operate on less money, and these are public schools, than their counterparts. They offer children travel opportunities. Schools that are progressive believe that children need to have learning experience outside of the curriculum in the classroom. They need to explore their world. In the alternative community school in Ithaca, New York, students spend their entire year raising money in various ways so that they can travel to Peru, France, the Virgin Islands, Mexico, and other countries, as well as staying on reservations with Native Americans and doing the kinds of things that they want to do in respect to travel. Every student has the opportunity to travel at some point. Successful schools have high standardized test scores, even though they do not focus on standardized tests, and for the most part some of them don't even give testing to their students to move from one grade to the other. Still, the process of learning develops for students the ability to be resourceful in any situation, including testing situations. They are environmentally sustainable and have ecological values. They believe in recycling and in taking care of the children in the school. Students, for the most part in these schools, take part in every aspect of the school culture. For example, when we were talking about the school in Ithaca, students, in order to raise money, are the support staff. They cook in the cafeteria, they clean the school, they maintain the internal and external structure of the school, they work in the office, and they do all of the little programs around the school that normally would hire support staff. That money that is paid instead of to support staff goes towards their travel. Successful schools have high interest subject matter. And it is high interest because it is the students that precipitate what kinds of things will be studied, because there are many, many choices in the curriculum. Choices for students, choices for teachers, and choices for parents. This is how they maintain high levels of interest, because the impetus for learning is given back to the child, given back to the student, where the responsibility needs to be. And it is the ability to respond, or respond ability, that is significant to becoming a whole human being. They have unconventional delivery systems, and by that I mean they don't use time spent, they don't use test scores to measure standards for students. They use unconventional ways, by some sitting around the classroom and talking, using computers, having children do research and analysis, and coming up with questions themselves. For the most part, they use in-depth conversation. In in-depth conversation, students develop questioning techniques, because as any educator knows, a highly intelligent student will ask intelligent questions. There are moments of silence to digest information and areas of privacy. In our schools today, we do not understand the need for a child to digest information and have quiet times away from the multitudes. This gives a child the ability to assimilate all they have learned throughout the day or in parts of the day. It is a critical element in a child's learning. Successful schools value human life and give dignity and respect to their students, and in turn receive it the same. There is low violence and low crime, and few teen pregnancies. Basic life skills are taught as part not just of a curriculum, but of everyday life. There's high college attendance and completion, high spirits and motivation and determination among students. Students demonstrate critical thinking skills at all times. Students also demonstrate the ability to research, to resource opportunities, and to have capabilities to find any kind of information that they need. There is high faculty-employee job satisfaction. People are happy and excited to go to work, the teachers and the administrators and the support staff of any. Outstanding popularity and low dropout rates, where attendance is high, is in most successful schools. Most successful schools have the faith in a child's ability to learn and gravitate to what is needed to be learned. There is a tremendous faith in children that learning will happen no matter what. The byproduct of faith in the child is that children develop hope. When children have hope in their daily life, their attitudes and belief systems will be able to change. They will be able to grow and modify their learning as long as they know they are safe, and that there is a future and that there is hope. Successful schools think in systems and patterns that extend the sense of time to a new horizon. No longer is it the need to feel safety. Education specialists whose bailiwick is hermetically sealed discipline. Rather, it develops links between all the branches of knowledge. These schools also have a comprehension of how cause and effects work in a complex system. There are multiple dimensions of thinking: the mind, the body, the spirit, the emotions, the cognitive, the affective, the psychomotor. All domains are involved in every dimension of thinking for the child. A mind that is capable to design, to build, to repair, to grow, to heal, to form, to tinker, to orchestrate, to improvise, to tell good stories. A mind with a range and a stretch. These are the minds that are developed and reflect the knowledge of how to do many things well with complexity, agility, resilience, which is unknown to specialists who see things in a narrow perspective. Successful schools believe that true education must be more than merely the transmission of factual information and techniques and know-how. It must provide the know-why, clarifying a child's central convictions and wisdom. All successful progressive schools have less than 300 children. There is experimental learning, manipulation, exploration, and experimentation. Child-centered learning and a trust in a child's capacity to learn are everywhere and built into the system, as well as allowing children to play as a learning tool. Very few tests are used, but rather are substituted with portfolios, graduation by exhibition, and community service as measurement tools of success. Students are expected to have 100% mastery of their subject area. The use of texts and computers and tests are all tools for learning rather than ends in themselves. In all of this, education is perceived by students as a privilege rather than a right, developing character, values, and training in all of these areas, as well as survival skills. Children are seen as whole human beings rather than sum of parts, and the value and integrity of life is maintained. The best practice schools are found around the world. I'm going to take a step back in time to visit the one-room schoolhouses of the 1800s, because there were many things happening in the one-room schoolhouses that reflect best practices. Certainly, we are not going to glorify that time when snakes were crawling through the rooms, or with the dirt floors, or the fact that the young children had to sit in the front because they kept warm next to the wood stove, and the older children sat in the back next to the cold door during the winter, or the fact that sometimes students had to sleep in the school because of the blizzards and the snowstorms, or that teachers slept with their students and received pay of firewood or a good meal. But rather, the one-room schoolhouses set a precedent for many other good qualities, and those are: children were never labeled. A child who did not learn a lesson heard it over and over and over again when it was repeated through the grades and through the years to other students. A child was never humiliated and told that they did not learn a lesson, but rather the teacher knew that eventually that lesson would be learned from having it repeated. Students also wanted to learn. They wanted to be there, and they wanted to be successful in life. We did not have in those days the mandatory attendance laws. The children who went to school because they wanted to learn. Children in the morning would get up at 5 o'clock, milk the cows and do their chores, and hurry to school to be there by 8 o'clock. They would have spent at least 3 hours working at home prior to their going to school. They would work all day, come home at night, do their schoolwork, and continue to do chores around the house. So it was a dedicated child who spent their time in the one-room schoolhouses of the 1800s. The expectation was high for the students. There was a sense of community in a one-room schoolhouse because at that time it was small, and when you have smallness, there are many factors that are important. Some of the factors include hard work, learning to work together no matter what differences or handicaps others have is the rule. In our affluent society today, hard work is missing and has given way to material possessions, guilt from less parenting time, which leads to getting one's way. Respect is earned, it is not given. Children learn respect when they receive it from adults. Adults give respect when children work hard. It's a time to stop thinking of how many material possessions we have today or need to have because of its size and consider the quality of its education like it was in the 1800s. The most successful schools are small, and small means that the administrative staff is sparse and the actual teaching staff is heavy. Today, 3 teachers can be hired for every administrator. The discipline factors in small schools are cut dramatically because the principal knows everyone by name on their merits, rather than as a discipline problem. The school becomes the neighborhood school because children walk rather than bus. Parents participate because the school becomes the center of the community. Everyone knows their neighbor and is accountable. Every parent knows other parents in order to communicate concerns rather than faceless names mentioned in passing. There is a real-world cultivation of real-world values, interpersonal and intrapersonal relationships for children in small schools. Today, businesses concerned with graduates who lack critical thinking skills find children from small schools able to understand the depth of subject matter rather than the breadth. Students in small schools are able to study subjects in depth, and the shopping mall mentality of learning everything about every subject is diminished. In small schools, the burden of ownership and proof rests on children where it should be. Children learn to own, respect, and take care of each other in small schools. There are fewer children, hence fewer opportunities to have cliques. Everyone must learn to assist each other and work together. But in large schools, avoidance and becoming invisible in a number are more frequently the case. Think about it yourself. How many people can you befriend at one time? No more than 3 or 4. The rest are merely acquaintances. Yet we desensitize children to human needs and interaction by exposing them to extremely large numbers of youth, like products on the assembly line. This creates the necessity for cliques, groups, and ostracizing others. Manageable relationships in small schools create healthy interactions, which lead to human qualities like compassion, sharing, and honesty. Small schools enable these bonds with children of all ages, not just same-age students. The disasters of our middle school movement have reflected the need for children to feel elder status, to receive transition training and apprenticeship from adults rather than from peers like they did in years gone by. Isolation of teens with teens have proved that rites of passage to adulthood are interrupted when bonding becomes peer-related. Children learn to bridge the age barriers, tolerate differences, and develop communication skills beyond generations, just like the real world in small schools. There is more time for teachers to spend with individual students as well. There are many more success stories. There are more opportunities for depth of education, character, and problem solving. Small schools create closer school cultures and communities. There is more time to spend with each student. There is more time for staff development. There's more time in general, and children need our time. In small schools, children learn more real-life cause and effect because behavior is directly influencing everybody in the school and the larger community. Therefore, children get a better worldview on life from this type of school culture. Smallness breeds closeness. Closeness breeds familiarity. Familiarity breeds security and safe environments. When children feel safe, they learn faster. Your response to all of this is the big question. How can we make our schools smaller? It's interesting because in our culture today, in good business, when things get unmanageable, the company downsizes. American education, when faced with management problems, upsizes. Instead of adding more expensive staffing like psychologists, guards, administrators, and support staff, building and consolidating into bigger schools, why not do the unthinkable and downsize the schools? You see, in small schools, you diminish busing children and the costs related to it. You do not have many things because it is not as cost-effective. The community can see a return on its investment because neighborhood schools are visible to everyone and not located 10 miles down the road. The need for specialists is diminished because peer group counseling replaces psychologists' mediation and other problem-solving skills that all students need to learn for life rather than a select few. The children participate in other jobs that decrease the need for staff, and in this way, by direct participation, they grow a sense of pride in their school, something we lack dearly today. In small schools, students might not be getting the latest curriculum books because co-op schools must co-op, share, and learn to do without. But then traditional school district curriculum texts are often obsolete before they arrive in the classroom. Instead of 50 computers, there might be 10. Instead of purchasing many new books, students go to the nearest library. Small schools learn to use their creative resources instead of monetary ones. There are many resources in the community other than money. We have become so fixated on money that our children have lost the ability to be resourceful, a critical element in learning. In small schools, you learn to be resourceful, especially with the local community. Money is not the answer to our problems. Learning to do with what we have in creative ways is an answer. The smaller the school, the more resourceful they become, and children enjoy the process of finding the solutions. That is part of the learning process, not the spoon-feeding methods we use today. Is there a way for us to begin to look at downsizing our schools? You know, small schools do not eliminate the problems completely. That would be utopia. However, because the size is manageable, prevention and mediation are responses to future large-scale problems. By placing armed guards in schools, metal detectors, and surveillance cameras, the fear levels are heightened. Learning is diminished because a child's mind is in a fright-flight modality. When afraid, a child cannot and will not learn. When the principal and the teachers know every child and every parent, when the students know each other and must constantly work together daily for the common good, when communities know their students by name and neighborhood, then the problems in schools become manageable as well. Problems will always exist, but the ability to respond to problems is the key to life. When schools become smaller, response time is lessened through prevention, intervention, and group control. There have been many small schools around the world that have adopted many different kinds of principles. Some of them are the small schools of Europe, based on depth rather than breadth of learning. Others have had different philosophies. The Steiner schools, the Waldorf schools started by Rudolf Steiner. The Montessori schools started by Dr. Maria Montessori. The Reggio Emilia daycares started in Italy. There are many, many models for us to choose from, all of them having a different philosophy and a different bent on how learning takes place in very small environments. Most of them create learning environments for children where they can move and explore in many different ways. On the other side of this tape, I will begin to explain to you how the integrated learning systems model works, what it is, the methodology, how we integrate the different systems, and how we create curriculums for the 21st century. We only have a brief time and cannot go into depth. However, each one of the areas will be gone into depth on other tapes from other professionals in our consortium. will merely do what I will merely do for you is to introduce the systems to you and the methodology by which they happen, show you how to integrate them, and show you how to create them a system of curriculums in your school district, in your community, and in your area, even if you're only homeschooling your children at home. Please stay tuned to the second side of this tape, where I will introduce to you the Integrated Learning Systems method. Integrated learning systems include 8. Body, mind, spirit, emotion, environment, energy, symbols, and perception. The methodology by which we integrate those systems are see, hear, touch, taste, smell, silence, stillness, movement, instinct, and will. These are all systems we will be learning about. This system deviates from the 5 core curriculum and the way we have perceived learning takes place, and is based in the latest brain-mind research in holographic learning. Please stay tuned to Side 2 to learn about the systems. For years, the idea of integrated learning systems has been around, mostly for the gifted and talented. If you have ever been exposed to programs like History Day, Mock Trial Day, or the Odyssey of Mind, those programs were specifically designed to integrate many different facets: intellectual, creativity, psychomotor, and all the different domains. Integrated systems is not new, it's been around for years. However, we have not looked at it as a learning system itself. Let me repeat the integrated systems. They are 8. Body, mind, spirit, emotions, environment, energy, symbols, and perception. The methods by which we learn them are see, hear, touch, taste, smell, silence, stillness, movement, instinct, and will. When we look at the brain, if we look at these integrated systems as if we are a machine, which in fact, for the most part, we are, because we do not have conscious will, think of yourself as a spaceship. Maybe you want to think of yourself as an alien spaceship, since most of us feel like aliens on this earth. Your body is the ship. It's that which you must take care of in order for you to be able to move through this earth. Your mind is the computer that controls the ship. Your spirit is the energy that's invisible that surrounds the ship all over. Your emotions are the fuel that propels the ship. The environment is both the internal, the external environment. Energy is an invisible force that is much bigger than just the energy and the spirit that moves the ship, but is relevant to a universal force and the one truth. Symbols are the way by which you communicate with your ship and with the outside world, and perceptions are the way that you see the world from your narrow frame of reference. All of these things are integrated systems that we really do not look at when we are educating children. But we must look at them, because once you learn each system and once you learn to integrate it, you may learn anything at any time in any subject area. You can learn 5 different subjects simultaneously. The key is that we mostly walk around this life asleep and like a machine. Think about it for a second. What moves faster than thought? Does anything move faster than thought? Can you think a thought and move your body at the same time? Try to do it fast. Try to run and think about running. Try to move your arms quickly and think about moving your arms quickly. In essence, the very thing that we focus on in education, which is the mind, the brain, is the slowest moving part of our body. And it gets slower and slower the more we use the last 3 systems. Symbols, in fact, are very, very slow means, much slower than thought. We don't really think of these things, but one of the fastest movements we have in our world is our emotions. Emotions happen faster than thought. They travel faster than the speed of thought. But we really never deal with emotions with our children. We never deal with any part of their environment. Basically, we teach to the brain and nothing else. And even then, we don't understand how the brain works. I told you the integrated systems were body, mind. You notice I did not use the word brain, because there is a difference between brain and mind. Brain is the physical organ. Mind are the functions by which the brain uses, capitalizes, and has the capabilities of doing. And there is a difference. If we look at each system individually, body, mind, spirit, emotions, environment, energy, symbols, and perception, each one gives us our view of the world and how it takes place. For the most part, these views are distorted. They are distorted at birth from adults, most of whom are good-natured in attempting us to try and learn the ways of the world. Let's take our body, for example. Do you eat when you're hungry? Do you drink when you're thirsty? Or do you eat because it's 12 o'clock? Or because it's breakfast time or dinner time? Most people do not have the ability to know how their body works, much less how to control it. There are many, at least 8 billion activities happening in your body simultaneously at one time. We have a way of referring to those activities. We say, I am. I am breathing. I am digesting food. I am growing hair. I am growing a baby. I am all at the same time. Interestingly enough, in ancient cultures many years ago in ancient religions, those two words were never to be spoken, I am. They were sacred because they defined something very, very special in the body. Today we have lost the understanding of our body, how it's used, how we can control it. For the most part, we walk life asleep, unaware of the functions that go on. The body is extraordinarily important, and every single part is connected to everything else. Ancients tell us that the hands, for example, in the palm of your hand is contained your heart. It's connected to your heart by a meridian. Is it any wonder then that we speak of feeling with our hands and feeling with our hearts, both of which are connected and come down to us from ancient times? Our toes are connected to our lungs by meridians, according to the ancient Chinese and Japanese. And yet, we do not think of our toes connected to anything else. The meridians I was speaking about have been known for thousands of years, that are energy systems in the body that connect everything with everything else. For example, if you have lower back pain, take a look and see if you have a distended stomach. 9 times out of 10, low back pain is caused and created because of something wrong in the digestive system or in the stomach area. Both are connected to each other. Simple adjustments by a chiropractor will help that process. And of course, a few losses in weight and pounds will also help the process. If you want to help your back, you need to look at your front. The greater the back, the greater the front. But we don't look at our body in this way. In order to work with children, you must help them to learn that their body is a whole piece, functions in the same way. You don't think of your car as a tire, or as a battery, or as a steering wheel, any more than you should think of a child's body as a brain. There is much more to teach a child than through just focusing on brain connection. The body, with its 8 billion connections happening simultaneously, is in need of your awareness of it. And in your awareness, and you're becoming knowledgeable about yourself and your own self-discovery, you will be able to understand how to work with children. A spirit is far different than religion. Spirit is an internal movement. It is that which propels us. It is intangible. It has no words to describe it. And there are ways in the methodology by which we can come in touch with it. The greatest and fastest way to get in touch with spirit is through silence and stillness. Silence is a tremendous way to find out that spirit inside of you, or that spirit inside of a child, that help it to move in this earth. Emotions are the part that most of us lack control over the most, besides for our racing minds. Emotion is something that is a feeling. Actually, emotions are propelled by mind. We think of them as something separate from mind, but they are not. When you think about it, why do you get angry? Why do you get frustrated? Why do you feel proud or sad? It is because of a thought system, a belief system, or an attitude that has rippled your being, that creates an emotion inside of you. It either is a complementary part of you or a not complementary part of you. The greatest lessons we can learn is by listening to our emotions. Emotions tell us many things about ourselves. They are the means by which we can learn about ourselves if we truly, truly take time to look. Emotions, when you get angry, look at why you are getting angry. You get angry, for the most part, because someone has become a reflection of you, and someone has manifested a part of you that you do not choose to look at. Think of that the next time you get angry. Think of the person who is making you angry, or think of the person getting angry. Anger and emotions are projections. They are not the spirit inside of a person. They are merely a reaction to some mental function in the body. Environment. Environment has many facets. Environment includes religion, culture, society, ethnic background, and the physical environment. Each of these are extraordinarily important in developing child. The physical environment must be natural and healthy. A child receives through the body having eyes not only in its head, but in every pore, in every muscle, and in every cell. The body assimilates everything in the physical environment. If a child spends days in a physical environment without going outside in unnatural light, unnatural air, eating unnatural foods, breathing unnatural air, can you not justify then why they have asthma, sickness, and allergies? It is imperative that we look at our environments, the toxicity by which we live, so that we can teach a child to be in a healthy frame of reference in order to be able to learn and move through the world. Religion, culture, and society create rules for the child by which they move in the earth and succeed through daily life. These are all extremely important because each of them in turn develops the perceptions and the symbols and the energy, the three last of our integrated systems, by which we perceive the world. If you are born in a certain religious faith, there are certain rules to adhere to. If you are born in certain culture, there are rules to adhere to. Even your ethnic background is important because each of these, and for the child, each of these specific areas are important in terms of learning their integrated systems. When we talk about mind, we talk about much more than the brain. I have been talking about thoughts earlier. Thoughts are the impetus by which many of the systems in the body respond to. It is the initiator, other than instinct. It is the initiator of our responses in the world. And our mind is developed and perceived by all of the other integrated systems. We develop attitudes and beliefs in this world through our mind, not our brain, through our mind. Energy is another system. It is something that's very intangible. It is something that is very difficult to understand. And it is based on systems that are motivating and moving in the world by which we cannot see. There are many truths. There are only one truth. There are many paths to the truth. And the truth can be known by learning about the different systems. Energy flows through every part of our being all of the time. If you think of an atom, in between the spaces of an atom, there is nothing. There is no material. When we get down to the basics of physics, all atoms, all molecules still have in between them spaces. These spaces our mind or thought, because it is a thought that creates everything in the world through energy. Energy propels us in many different ways. Energy moves us. Energy is here all the time. We must learn how to harness that energy. We learn to harness electricity by creating electrical wires and impulses and motors. We learn to harness the energy of water, to harness the energy of a horse, to harness our own energy of running or singing or breathing. The energy systems are imperative to learn in order for you to be able to integrate the other systems. Symbols are much more complicated. Symbols in our society today have become so complicated that they slow down the thinking process. The slowest form, the slowest symbol in the communication system is the word. The word takes a tremendous amount. Think about it yourself when you have a thought. Your mind can race faster than you can speak. The spoken word and the written word are the slowest form of communication. If we go backwards in the swiftness of communication, in symbolic form, the symbol, the shape, and the number are much more expedient. Numbers being next down from the word or the letters, and the symbolic systems themselves, the shapes, are first. If you notice in Egyptian writing, all over the pyramids, you will not find words, you find symbols. Because symbols are the fastest way in ancient cultures, like Japanese and Chinese. Words are symbols. Symbols are the fastest form of expression that we have. We have moved very far away from it and created many languages, even in our own culture today. We have the language of medicine, the language of education, the language of the North and the South. There are many different languages according to the culture and the environment to which we live. These languages often create barriers and miscommunications. So we must understand that in order for children to learn, they need to get to the basic forms of learning symbols and communication first. If we progress through those symbols naturally, through shapes, then number, then word, children will be able to integrate systems and build the neurons of the brain. Our perceptions of the world, and perception being the last, are the most difficult for us. Most of the time, we walk through life with tunnel vision. Our tunnel vision has been developed because of our environment, because of our parents, and because of the way we have learned through life. Perceptions are accumulations of our parents' attitudes and beliefs, the adults around us, the people around us, our community, our emotions and our responses to those emotions, our bodies and the way our body was treated and the way we treat it. So our perceptions are our rose-colored glasses. It is the way we perceive the world and see the world. Every single person on this planet has a different perception and view of the world. When we learn our own perceptions and the way we see the world and accept them, and in turn accept others' perception of the world, we will then be integrating a system that integrates all other systems. The methodology by which these systems are learned are through the senses, but also I have added a few more: silence, stillness, movement, instinct, and will. Through these systems, methodology of the systems, we learn our world. Can you really tell me that you spend, or tell yourself, that you are able to sit still for periods of time without speaking, moving, talking, or thinking? Are you able to sit in silence? Silence is the way to integrate all systems. In silence, the mind ceases and the thoughts cease, and the systems fall into place like puzzles, pieces of puzzle to form the whole puzzle. And yet few of us spend many times in silence throughout our day. It is probably the most critical part of the integrated systems. Movement is easy. Instinct is natural. And will is the highest order. It is will that we do not understand, and I'm going to put a new domain on will called the connotative. It is the connotative domain. It is the part of us that somehow responds as we begin to integrate in all the systems. When we learn how these systems are used within our own bodies, our purpose here is for self-discovery. In self-discovery, and only in self-discovery, can we learn how to teach other people. In essence, we really can't teach anyone anything. We can only provide opportunities for learning. And therefore it is imperative to know that if you are a teacher out there or a parent, there is nothing that you can teach your child except to be a model of integrated systems. When you become a model for learning, the energy, that intangible quality that makes you know when a person walks in the room that somehow they make you feel uncomfortable or somehow they make you feel happy. That invisible energy between a parent and a child, between a teacher and a child, is proliferated by modeling. Think about it. A bird follows the model of the parent. A fish follows the model of a parent. A child follows the model of everyone and everything in its environment. So being a model of self-realization and self-discovery will automatically set up an energy for the child to do the same. When you acknowledge yourself and your own self-systems, you acknowledge it in everyone on the planet. Once you develop these integrated systems, learn the systems, learn the methods by which these systems are used, then you will be able to create curriculum for a child. Curriculum is not developed by someone on high in a curriculum textbook company who decides what you should learn and how you should learn it and when you should learn it, but it is developed through problem-based learning. Problem-based is by taking the problem, either in your community, in your family, in your child, and taking that problem and using every resource that you have to come to solutions. Developing questioning techniques. The first thing to do after determining the problem is to write down 20 questions about the problem. What do you want to know? Every time you start this process of writing down questions to answer a problem, you will be developing more and more questioning techniques that help you to assimilate and integrate all the different systems. Once you develop the ability to write 20 questions for each problem, then you will go about the task of developing the curriculum itself. Writing down what you want to learn, writing down the projects or the venues by which you will learn it, and then creating assessment tools that will determine whether or not the area is learned. Anyone can develop a curriculum. All curriculum and all schools should be community-based and community homegrown. That is the function that we believe will be for the 21st century in the schools. If we continuously worry about creating schools for one aspect of society or another. We continually try to make education all things for all people. It is not. It must start somewhere. We must go back again to develop depth rather than breadth, to develop critical thinking skills in our children, and the ability to be resourceful will determine how much depth they are learning in the classroom and in their lives. Sitting in front of the television with chopped up learning systems, which is what the television is, does not teach depth. Sitting with a good book for a long period of time or listening to stories teaches depth. Actually, storytelling and playing, allowing a child to play, are two of the greatest forms of integrated systems because the entire body becomes part of the learning process. The imagination, the intuition, the movement, the spirit, the emotions, everything becomes involved. Real-world skills for students for the 21st century will be the integration of the psychomotor, the affective, the cognitive, and now the integrative and the connotative domain to represent the 5 portions of the functioning brain. Children will need to learn connectedness, interdependence, high-level speaking and writing, organizational skills, interpersonal and interpersonal skills and relationships, teamwork, use of resource and research, creativity, to choose and discriminate from a variety of stimuli, the ability to be able to filter out factoids, the things that you see on the television. Have you ever gone into a movie theater without seeing a factoid advertised? All of these factoids are insignificant pieces of information that are bombarding a child's mind and need to be filtered. Skills for real world include flexibility, community partnership, technology skills, environmentally sustainable skills, real-world integration, multiple learning styles, diversity and ethnically applicable systems, character and values training, lifelong survival skills, career planning, career opportunities, multiple intelligences, service to the public, service versus control as a learning model, self-control, self-assessment, independence, time management, self-management, multidisciplinary, multidimensional, reality-based, high levels of joy, humor, and fun, self-organizing, and a variety of presentations, venues, modalities for learning and expression to take place. Students of the 21st century must learn something entirely different in order for learning to take place. It is no longer subject area, but it is integrated systems of their own environment and their own bodies that must take place before they can ever learn anything. As anyone knows, if you are emotionally distraught or have your own child, a parent, or a close friend in the hospital, it is very difficult to concentrate on learning. When any of these systems are out of balance, no learning can take place. We need to focus more, not just on the mind and the brain, but on the other aspects as well of the integrated systems. And again, those systems include the body, the mind, the spirit, the emotions, the environment, which includes religion, culture, society, ethnic and physical, energy, symbols, and perceptions. The methodology by which they are learned is to see, to hear, to touch, to taste, to smell, to be silent, to be still, to move, to have instinct, and to will. These are the answers to the 21st century in our curriculum for our children for tomorrow.